Because of false ministers, wolves in sheep's clothing, preaching that the law of God does not exist for Christians. The law of God does not stand anymore. God did not command so. We have a lawless society. We have horrendous atrocities taking place of people being treated unfairly. We have injustice day to day that we get to see day after day. We see these things taking place, and the biggest culprits in this whole equation are ministers that are preaching that we do not have to keep the law of God any longer.
I, as a believer, you as a believer, are not under any of the law of Moses at all, including the law that says thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, murder, have no other gods. We're not under any of that law.
Jesus is the one who said in Matthew chapter 24, verse 12, because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. Matthew 23, verse 27, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, religious leaders he's speaking to. He says, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautifully outwardly, but inside are full of dead man's bones and all uncleanness. Even so you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. So Jesus preached more about the law than anyone else, but these ministers preach that we do not have to keep the law of God. This is coming from the words of the Messiah that warned us of things that is to come and how lawlessness will increase day after day, and we will see these things taking place.
To help those that are in bondage to the law and have given heed to false doctrine, and
That's why it says, for all have sinned and all fall short of the glory of God. God is like such an incredible holy being that just like the slightest thought of anything is sin. Like there's no way you can become perfect in your sinly, disgusting flesh, which dies and rots, dude. You're not going to become sinless.
And why? Why is it happening? Because there are ministers preaching that we do not have to keep the law of God. The law of God still stands. I choose to obey the Lord. What is your choice?
My stepdaddy's drunk.
They have also healed the hurt of my people slightly, saying, peace, peace.
When there is no peace. Were they ashamed when they had committed abomination? No, they were not at all ashamed, nor did they know how to blush. Therefore, they shall fall among those who fall. At the time I punish them, they shall be cast down. Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword.
Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and have done many wonders in your name? So notice he's talking about a Christian, because the non-Christians are not calling him Lord, Lord, it's the Christians who are calling him Lord, Lord. And then he says in verse 23, and then I will declare to them, I never knew you, depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. So those who commit iniquity, those who practice lawlessness, breaking the law of God. Now, if we need to understand if the entire law still stands, and we are meant to keep it for those who are in the period of grace, Matthew chapter 5 verse 17. Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy but to fulfill. For surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law until all is fulfilled. Notice that he's speaking about the law. From there he says in verse 19, whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven, but whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For surely I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Now this particular righteousness is keeping God's law. You cannot be self-righteous because it's His law. You get your righteousness from keeping His law.
Originally in my notes, I was going to put a screen up here that said, in other words, that means thou shalt not obey the 10 commandments. But I knew someone would take a picture of that, and it would define me for the rest of my life. So I'm not going to put it up there, but I want you to hear me say it. Here's what the Jerusalem Council was saying to the Gentiles. You are not accountable to the 10 commandments.
In verse 21 he says, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of judgment, and whoever says to his brother Raka shall be in danger of counsel, but whoever says you fool shall be in danger of hell fire. And then he carries on further. If you look at verse 27, he says, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So notice what he says here. He's dealing with the law. He's dealing with the 10 commandments. And then as he reads through it, he's setting it on a higher plane. Now we need to see in the Old Testament, if you look at Isaiah chapter 42, to see if Jesus is going to come and do away with the law or actually magnify it, lift it and make it obviously honorable. So if you look at Isaiah 42, look at verse 21. It says, the Lord is well pleased for His righteousness' sake. He will exalt the law and make it honorable. You see, He will exalt the law. So when Jesus comes, He's going to exalt the law, not do away with it, just as Jesus spoke in Matthew 5 verse 17. You see, the problem is that people want to split up the law. They don't want the commandments. They don't want specifically the Sabbath commandment. They're happy with every other commandment. If you take the people through the understanding, ask, must you worship or can you worship any other God but through Jesus Christ? It says they'll say no. Ask if you can use or bow down to idols. They'll say no. Ask if you can use God's name in vain. They'll say no. Now let's go right past the Sabbath day for now, and then come to the honor your father and your mother. They say yes, you must do that. Ask, can you murder? They say no. Ask, can you commit adultery? No. Can you steal? No. Can you bear false witness? No. Can you covet? They'll say no. So they actually want you to keep the 9 commandments, because now you ask, what about the Sabbath day? Should we keep it? And the moment they ask that question, should we keep the Sabbath? They say no, that's for the Jews. So instantly now you push that commandment on the Jews, and it's no more 10 commandments, which is perfect, like your 10 fingers and your 10 toes. It's now 9 commandments according to these people. The same commandment God commands to remember is the same that man is commanding you to forget. I'd rather go with what God says. Mark chapter 2 verse 27. Jesus himself says, and he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man. The word man here in the Greek word is anthropos. Anthropos means human being, person, a person, people. It doesn't mean Jew. He didn't say the Sabbath was made for Jew. He says the Sabbath was made for man, for the human being, for mankind. and not man for the Sabbath. Verse 28, he says, therefore the Son of Man is also the Lord of the Sabbath. So he confirms his lordship of the day by saying the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. So this is the issue, and this is the reason why people don't want the law, specifically because of the Sabbath day. But now if you go and you look at the writings of Paul, the writings of Paul will confuse most people, and that's what people like to build their case on. But have a look at what Paul says about the commandments, and therefore you cannot go against what he's saying if you read the rest of the scriptures, obviously out of context, understanding that there's actually two laws. There's the Mosaic law. God spoke the law, but Moses wrote that. So God shows that it's a fleshy law because it's the man that is flesh that is writing it. When it comes down to the Ten Commandments, it's a spiritual law. The reason why we know that it's a spiritual law is because God wrote it and God is spirit. That's the two differences between the law. But now look what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 from verse 19. He says, circumcision is nothing and uncircumcision is nothing, but keeping the commandments of God is what matters. Now look what he says. He says keeping the commandments of God is what matters. Now there's no way that you can speak against the commandments thereafter. You cannot speak against the law thereafter. You can't do that. If he says that keeping the commandments of God is what matters, why thereafter would he say that you don't have to keep it or be dead to the law? Unless there's two different laws once again. If we look at Romans chapter 7 verse 12, it says, therefore, Paul writes and says, therefore the law is holy and the commandment is holy and just and good. The Bible tells us that we must be holy. God says we must be holy for He is holy. Now how must you be holy? Must you not be holy by keeping a holy law, a holy commandment? Must you not be just and good? How do you do that? By keeping a just law, a just commandment, a good commandment. People need to understand that there's two different laws, and they are mixing it and they're putting it together in one basket, and they shouldn't do so. There's a spiritual law, and then there is there obviously is a fleshy law. Romans chapter 13 verse 8. It says, owe no one anything except to love one another, for he who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you see, he says fulfill the law, and then he says for the commandments. He's telling you that the commandments and the law is the same thing. It's exactly what Jesus said in Matthew 5 verse 17, when he spoke about the law and then he interchangeably spoke about the commandments. So here, Paul is doing the same thing. He says, he who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet, and if there is any other commandment, are all summed up in this, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore love is a fulfillment of the law. Now why is he telling us to love, to fulfill the law, if apparently the same Paul says we did to the same law? Again, unless there's a different law. Please understand that. Very important to grasp and to understand. 1 John chapter 2 verse 3, we'll end off with this. 1 John chapter 2 verse 3 says, now by this we know that we know Him, if we keep His commandments. Same set of commandments, same set of laws. He who says, I know Him, and does not keep His commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps His word, truly the love of God is perfected in him. By this we know that we are in Him. He who says he abides in Him ought himself to walk just as He walked. Remember, Jesus said, I've kept my Father's commandments, so we must walk just as He walked, keeping the same set of commandments, which includes the Sabbath day. Verse 7 says, brethren, I write a new commandment to you, but an old commandment which you have had from the beginning. The old commandment is the word which you heard from the beginning. The word is Jesus Christ. The word is the commandments. The commandments is all about love. Jesus is the very embodiment of love. As true born-again children of the Most High God, we keep God's commandments. God bless.